It's time for Supply Chain Now, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Greg, we've got a great one in store. We're going to be talking with a couple of business leaders doing big things in the industry, especially as it relates to cloud and data privacy, cybersecurity stuff, right?
Yeah, cloud and law. What a great combination. I mean, seriously, the cloud has introduced an entirely new era in technology. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to talk about.
I agree. We're going to be working hard to increase your supply chain tech IQ here today. More to come on that in just a moment. Quick programming note before we get started. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to check us out and subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. That's right, for free. And if you don't like an episode, we got a money back guarantee. So looking forward to today's conversation, though. You don't want to miss conversations like this. That's why you want to subscribe. So let's bring in our featured guest, Tim Quinn, Vice President, Client Advisory with Candid. Tim, how you doing?
Very good, Scott. Thank you for having me.
Welcome aboard.
You bet. Welcome today.
Thanks,
and you're
Greg.
joined by Kevin Coy, partner with our friends over at Arnall, Golden, Gregory, LLP. Kevin, how you doing?
Good. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Greg, for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, we've enjoyed our pre-show conversation, wide-ranging pre-show. Can't wait to dive more into all things cloud and law, as Greg put it. Great combination. But let's start, Greg, before we get to work. Let's start by getting to know both of these, Tim and Kevin, a little bit better. So, Tim, let's start with you. Tell us where you're from and give us an anecdote or two about your upbringing.
Oh, absolutely, Scott. So actually raised in rural West Georgia from a military family. So discipline was important growing up. Small town, West Georgia. Ended up going to University of Georgia. My English class or my history class was bigger than my entire high school. So that was interesting. And ended up going to Georgia, then turned around and went to Georgia Tech. So I'm covered on both sides of the fence there if I run for political office. So that's a little bit about me, and really been in the tech and tech space for a little over 25 years, doing some pretty interesting things. So I look forward to sharing some of these experiences.
So you got it. You're kind of hedging your bets a bit. What town did you grow up in?
It's a little town called Bremen, Georgia.
Oh yeah, of
Near
course.
Carrollton, Georgia.
Yeah.
Love Bremen. Lots of industry out there, surprisingly. I think Honda Lock's out there. You've got Southwire around the corner.
That's correct.
It sounds like a neat town, neat place to grow up for sure.
It's a great place to grow up.
Yep. All right, Kevin, same question. Tell us about where you're from and give us the goods on your upbringing a bit.
Sure. I'm from a small town in southeastern Michigan, a great little town called Ida. It's between Detroit and Toledo. Just a small little farming community. The grain silos dominate the town's skyline. Back when I was growing up, the town was about a block and a half long. After I went away to school, we had a growth spurt, and so we're about 2.5 blocks long now. And it was a great place to grow up. My family still owns one of the 2 bars in town, and just a fun little place.
Love it.
That's better than being mayor, owning the bar in town. You know more about what's going on.
That's so true. 1.5 blocks to 2.5 blocks. Huge growth spurt there, Kevin. I love that. All right. So where did you spend? What's one thing growing up in Ida, Michigan? What's one thing that you miss about your childhood or your formative years doing?
Oh, well, it was just sort of a small town experience where everybody knew everybody. I live in DC now, and that's not really the case anymore. So sort of missed that a little bit. And, I was something of a geek growing up and still am. So, my hobbies were things like stamp collecting and coin collecting. And when I went away to college, when I went to Georgetown, they had a little survey you were supposed to fill out to talk about your interests and things. So I put down coin collecting, but apparently they had a little trouble with my handwriting, and so when the directory came out, it said cow collecting. Created the I and the N, and so I had a lot of explaining to do my freshman year as to the intricacies of cow collecting.
Love that. Love that. And speaking of stamp collecting, I've got a newfound appreciation for that. My wife and I have really enjoyed the Fargo series on, I guess, Hulu. And the third season, the backdrop is a stamp collection that two brothers kind of duked it out over. So fascinating stuff. All right. So I want to go back to Tim here for a minute, Greg. Let's, we're all in search of really good information, finger on the pulse stuff. Greg, kind of, as you put it, the bar owner in town knows everybody and it's got a kind of corner market on market intel,
right?
How great of a position that would be. But Tim, in this ever evolving landscape, what's one of your go-tos for good news, information, insights, you name it?
Well, of course, Supply Chain Now. Of course, that's a given. Of course.
Ching.
I get a lot of information on LinkedIn. I really spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. It keeps up with the trends, what's going on with the kind of the businesses that I'm kind of focused on. I'm reading an interesting book. A couple of things I do about every 3 to 4 years. There's a book called Execution, the Art of Getting Things Done, which I read that about every 3 to 4 years just to remind me about that. And there's another interesting book that I'm reading that my CTO, Aaron Bauckham, had recommended, and it's a really interesting book about digital transformation. And if you're interested in digital transformation, and how do you kind of break down silos and break down kind of the bureaucracies within large enterprises, I strongly recommend a book by a guy named Mark Schwartz. It's The Delicate Art of Bureaucracy, Digital Transformation with the Monkey, the Razor, and the Sumo Wrestler. So I'm just starting that book. I'll keep you guys posted on it, but it's highly recommended for those that are interested in kind of digital transformation and modernizing your IT infrastructure and processes.
So is it a business novel approach, or are those metaphors for the transformation, or what?
They're metaphors for the transformation and the silos within very large enterprises. And of course, at Candid, we deal with very large organizations, mostly Fortune 500 organizations, Fortune 1000 organizations, where they're really trying to modernize and move forward on their digital transformation initiatives. But it's a very, very difficult thing internally from a bureaucracy perspective and systems and processes perspective. So it's kind of a training book for me in terms of what we do at Candid.
Love it. We struggle with podcast titles all the time. 100 characters or less, and it looks like that author has done really well at coming up with a nice creative way of selling his book, positioning the book. So love it. We should also add, Greg, Click to Transform. It's hit a lot of bestseller charts.
Right? I was just talking to him. I think we just released a couple episodes with him in the last couple of weeks.
That's right. On Tequila Sunrise. That's right.
Tim, I'd be interested if you maybe just listen to that, maybe even grab the book. It'd be interesting to compare perspectives on that. There's so many people talking about digital transformation these days, and I think you nailed it. And it's as much about process and organization and leadership as it is about technology.
Well said.
Absolutely, Greg. I'd love to read that book. And we had a meeting yesterday with a Fortune 200 company in the financial services space, and we asked her, the VP of Cloud, what her biggest challenge was, and it wasn't technology; it was human capital. Which, cloud is scary to even technology people, and even to IT people.
Yeah,
cloud is a sometimes scary concept.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, so Kevin, before we're kind of moving into both of your professional journeys, what's your go-to? What's the go-to when it comes to really good information, insights, you name it?
Two suggestions for everyone. Although unfortunately, there are no monkeys or razors anywhere in it, so these are going to be far more bland, but solid sources from my perspective, which is privacy and data security. On the privacy side, the website is iapp.org. It's the website of the International Association of Privacy Professionals. They're a global organization, about 50,000 members. They have great resources on privacy law developments around the world, across sectors. And so it's a good resource and a good organization. And on the data security side, a site called Krebs on Security, which the gentleman that runs that site is, I think, a former Washington Post reporter, and he reports on a whole range of data security issues, data breaches, and the like. Good source of sort of what's happening in the data breach space now.
Outstanding. Sounds like a couple great resources.
Yeah,
all the way
somebody
around.
referred me to Krebs the other day. And how about the irony of a privacy professional group with 50,000 members, right?
Yeah, they're growing.
I think it would be harder to get into than that, Kevin.
we as long as you care about privacy, that's our number one concern. You know, find that we're flexible.
That's right.
All right.
Good.
So,
well, so let's. So I appreciate you both sharing that. That's good. And as you are both readers or studiers, I'm always interested. You know, as you go through and you live your life and you run your career and you go through this journey and you study things, you always seem to have one or more of those eureka moments. So, Tim, I'd like to start with you. Share anything that you feel like has really kind of shaped you or even caused you to change your point of view.
Well, you know, that's very interesting. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, kind of from a background perspective. So back in the early or late 1990s, early 2000s, I started really my first software company. That company was called Route Match Software. We started right in the .com/.bomb era. It's here in Atlanta. We did supply chain optimization, route optimization, schedule optimization, dispatching, things of that nature for transportation logistics. And I was 29 years old, and the aha moment was that 6 months into it, 9 months into it, I realized that a 29-year-old kid is probably not qualified to build that company. But I persevered, learned a lot on the job, and kind of came out of it on the other end pretty good. So was involved in that company for 14 years, did really well, and actually just most recently got bought by Uber.
I got to tell you, that's a really mature awakening for somebody 29 years old, right? You think you're really grown up at 29, but to recognize that you might not be the optimal person for that role, that's a really mature awakening that most people don't have till a later age, and some, I don't know, me, may not have had yet.
So. Oh, absolutely. And I look back on that and realize, you know, kind of the things that are important that I just didn't understand at that age, in terms of how you deal with people, how you build a corporate culture, how how important human capital is, you know, and not having all the answers. You know, I thought I had all the answers, but I clearly didn't. So it was a very strong, eye-opening moment for me, and it kind of taught me a lot of lessons moving forward. So,
yeah, that's fantastic, and congratulations, by the way, on whatever goodness came of that. But having Uber on your resume is not a bad thing. Kevin, same question to you. I mean, anything that just completely shifted your focus or increased your focus or changed your worldview?
I don't know about any single eureka moment where the light bulb went off, as it were, but at some point along the line, law can often be very detail oriented, and that's by design, and that's very important. But also that there are, when working with clients, also big picture considerations and business needs that need to be taken into account. And it's just sort of an important practice, I think, to be able to, as best you can, sort of shift back and forth as you need to between the big picture considerations and the nitty gritty of the legal requirements, because especially in my area, privacy and data security, there are a lot of differing requirements in a lot of different jurisdictions. And so if you get down into the weeds, and sometimes you've got to go down into the weeds, it can get messy. Important to try and also remember the big picture. And from a privacy perspective, not only is what are you doing, can you do it, but should you do it?
Yeah. That's I got to tell you, that is a common refrain when we talk to people that are in the legal industry, is they kind of accumulate an analysis of their life. You're probably the third or fourth attorney that we've talked to said, I can't pin down or won't maybe pin down a single epiphanal moment, right? It's kind of an accumulation of moments that you use as you go forward. So that's really interesting. There's something to that. I mean, something to being a lawyer and thinking of the world in that way. The rest of us kind of have a wake up at some point, and maybe you guys are just that much more aware in the moment. Right. I don't know.
One of my, Greg, one of our favorite Eureka moments, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get him on the show yet, but Mark Twain once said that a man that carries a cat by the tail learns a lesson that you can't learn any other way, basically. So that's our favorite kind of Eureka moment. But hey, an accumulation of experiences certainly is valuable too.
We're working through his publicist, so we're hopeful. We know that he voted this year, so.
Ooh, Greg.
Kidding.
I don't know about Tim, but I can't compete with Mark Twain.
Yeah, right. That's a tough one.
You're a close second, Kevin. You're a close second.
So Tim, tell us a little bit about Candid, a little more about it, and kind of what you do, and how you're seeing the industry from that seat.
Oh, absolutely. So Candid is the largest and fastest growing independent cloud consulting firm in the nation. So we work primarily with very large enterprises on really 5 core areas in terms of cloud. We only do cloud. We don't do enterprise implementations with SAP or Salesforce. We only do cloud. And what I mean by cloud is we work with customers to help define cloud strategy, perform enterprise application migration from on-premise data centers into the cloud. We provide cloud native development to actually build apps and connect those apps. Anything mainframe modernization, believe it or not, guys, and I know a lot of folks are listening, that will be listening, is there's a lot of mainframe data still out in the world. About 80% of the data in the world is still on a mainframe. And this is mainframes. We migrated a mainframe or mainframe software that the software had not been compiled in 41 years. It had not been recompiled in 41 years.
So Tim, tell people what recompiling will do so that our non-tech folks get that.
Yeah, so software, there's a concept in software development called compilation. And there's a compiler that turns pseudocode or written code into binary formats that computers can read. That's what the compiling process is. So if you make a change in the software program, say in this case it was a mainframe using something called RPG on an iSeries IBM mainframe, if you want to make a change, say to fix a bug or add a feature, you have to recompile that code in order to put that into a production environment. So that one particular client did not make a single change to their software in 41 years until we migrated to the cloud. So, which is really, really amazing. The last thing that Candid does is we do something called Devops, which is a really, really, really big trend right now in terms of how you manage your development process in the cloud, from pushing out releases, QAing and testing it. There's concepts of DevOps and also DevSecOps or security ops. So we also focus on that as well. So with Kevin having a security background and kind of the legal background, the DevSecOps is a big part of what we do around security, auditing, assessments to make sure that the data is safe.
And DevOps is really the discipline around development that helps assure that you get code out in good quality and in appropriate time, correct?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And there's actually new positions and new careers for DevOps engineers,
Yes.
DevOps architects, which is
Scrum
a
masters and all of that, right?
it's a highly sought after skill set now in the marketplace from a talent perspective,
Yeah.
from a human capital perspective.
Yeah, the way that companies are developing these days has enabled a lot of speed in terms of development, and sometimes that speed comes at the expense of discipline. So DevOps is an initiative to help try to merge the two together.
Absolutely. And when we talk about cloud, we talk about moving to the cloud for agility, for innovation, speed to innovation, speed to market, as well as cost reduction. So all those things have to be kind of considered. And Greg, you asked kind of, what do I do at Candid? My job is really working with customers to help them understand what that path would be and provide them guidance and information to make the best decision as it relates to the cloud. And there's some times where it just doesn't make sense at this time to even move to the cloud. And we're very honest and transparent in that. And one point I want to bring up, because again, it was brought up by one of our customers this week, was, why move to the cloud without a proper business justification? And so I work with our customers really to provide the use cases and the business cases of why to make that decision and how to do it, and then bring the resources, the technical resources, to really give them that confidence to be able to do that.
We hear about moving to the cloud all the time. So I'm fascinated by the fact that there are cases that would preclude you from doing that. What's the most prominent, or the one that just stands out in your mind the most?
The one that's probably the biggest that we see is around older legacy systems, primarily around point of sale and billing systems, because that runs the business. And what we've seen, one of the biggest challenges is, again, not the tech, not even the people, but the business processes that have been built around, say, that particular system over the past 30, 40, 50 years. There's so much data, there's so many business processes built into it. The change impact, the change management associated with that is just simply massive. So we do work with our customers to go through that process, but that's a really big one. And again, it's all about business process and the impact of these 30, 40, 50-year-old processes built around a piece of technology.
Yeah, I mean, if you can almost picture it, right? Here's the technology, and then here's all the stuff that they've built around it. It's hard to get down through that into that technology. Plus, all of those customizations can be unsupported, right? So they create a tremendous burden.
Now, what we're seeing, and Greg, what we're seeing is the demand for data and data analytics, and some of the trends that we're seeing out in the world around machine learning, predictive analytics. The value of that concept is starting to drive people to make those types of decisions, because the data is not available in these older legacy systems. It's just not available to do the things that we need to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, in the supply chain world, you see that frequently. So, Kevin, I think we've well established that you're not the only geek here. So, tell us a little bit about what you do at AGG, and particularly your specialty around privacy and security.
Sure. My firm, AGG, Arnall, Gold and Gregory, we're an Atlanta-based firm with about 170 lawyers or so, most sitting down in Atlanta. I'm based up in our DC office. My practice focuses on privacy and data security law issues. I advise a wide range of organizations on privacy and data security issues, ranging from putting together a legally compliant privacy policy to responding to data breaches and other security incidents, handle government investigations around those matters, as well as assisting clients comply with federal, state, and also international privacy laws and regulations including those governing the transborder data flows, because some countries, not so much the US, but the European Union and a number of other jurisdictions restrict the flows of personal data to other countries depending upon what the law in those countries look like. So there's a lot of questions that come up around that.
Yeah, I've dealt with that. So when you have a company that you don't even have to be technically operating, because if you're in the cloud, right, a technology in the cloud, anyone can use it from anywhere. But if you have EU citizens who are utilizing your technology, you still have to comply with GDPR. I wish I could tell you what GDPR means, but I bet you can.
Yes, the General Data Protection Regulation. It's their newest iteration of privacy laws. It came on the books in May. It entered into full force in May of 2018, and it's been a big change. As you mentioned, it's got the legal jargon for it is extraterritorial reach, but
right.
Essentially that, as you say, means that if you're doing business with Europe, even if you're not in Europe, you potentially have compliance obligations under that regulation, and also potential legal exposure there. There's some ins and outs to it, depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it, but that applies, and it's much stronger than most U.S. laws. So if it's something for a U.S. organization, sometimes a little bit of work to get your arms around it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not without significant complexities, but I think consumers, for our community who's listening or watching this, if you think of, if you wonder the impact of GDPR, think about every time you go to a website, and now there is an accept cookies option on virtually every website, and on every website, by the way, you can select which cookies to allow. That is specifically due to compliance with GDPR. So
yes, none with raisins. Cookies do not. The raisins do not belong in cookies. So that's our public message, community service message. Hey, Kevin,
and I think it's cruel, by the way, Scott, that people put raisins in cookies that look like chocolate chips and trick us into selecting those cookies.
Oh boy, how much fun we could continue with this one. Hey, Kevin, do you work in the same office with Kevin Bell?
Yes, I do.
Oh wow.
What a
late because of all this COVID stuff, but yeah, he's just 2-3 doors down from me.
Gosh, you might have the most quoted quote on Supply Chain Now, Scott.
That's true. Gosh, Greg,
you want me to do it?
You can find opportunity in this challenging environment without being opportunistic, and that was one of many things he shared. But gosh, Greg, Kevin Coy and Kevin Bell. That's quite a 1-2 punch, huh?
It is. Yeah. I mean, and what, a timely space, time and space. I mean, I think privacy is huge, and I'm assuming, Tim, that you and Kevin must do some work together because, or you do some work in that same space, because privacy is such a huge concern when it comes to cloud technologies, right?
It absolutely is. And first, I need to do a big shout out to Michael Golden, who is in the Atlanta office, is a good friend. And so, Kevin, you probably know Michael. And
oh, absolutely.
So I want to shout out to him. And we do work with AGG on some of these types of issues. As an example, we're doing for a very, very large consumer goods company here in Atlanta, we're doing a security assessment and audit where there's an attestation document that has to be generated, which is a legal document. And that's something where the Kevins of the world can come in and kind of help us out with in terms of putting those things together.
It's a great point. Hey, when we're talking earlier about as fast as change is evolving, as fast as we're moving, just generally speaking with technology, Kevin, I imagine that opens up the doors for threat, especially from a cybersecurity, a data privacy standpoint. We're all familiar with all the big name retailers that have had some bad things happen to them and their consumers in recent years. Speak to that a bit. As fast as we're moving, what does that do threat wise?
The the threats continue to proliferate. Sort of the good guys, the bad guys, continue to move apace. Every time the good guys come up with a new good innovation from a security standpoint, the bad guys are right there trying to find out new ways of exploiting it, to find vulnerabilities and to take advantage. The COVID pandemic, no exception there, as many organizations were forced to go to a much greater degree of remote work than they were before. And companies had to scramble to put that functionality in place in many cases. Creates new opportunities, new vulnerabilities, depending on how the workforce is connecting to the system, how secure those connections are to potentially be exploited. And the bad actors are still also using the same sorts of tricks of the trade that they've been using for a while now, everything from ransomware to phishing attacks and other types of malware to compromise systems, steal personal data, or in the ransomware case, lock it up and hold it to ransom.
Right.
Gosh. All right. So let's kind of on that note, let's kind of move a little more broad here. And Tim, I want to bring you back in. You know, as we're surveying here, as we move towards the end of a historically challenging year, there's no shortage of things that we're all tracking on our radar and with our finger on the pulse. But what's one in particular maybe we haven't talked about from a global supply chain perspective that you and the Candid team are tracking?
Well, one of the big things we're tracking, and I know you guys had a discussion on it yesterday with the webinar on IoT, but we're seeing IoT coming into the mix across the supply chain much more effectively. So I actually have an IoT background with a previous company, so that's part of my responsibilities. What we're seeing is within the supply chain is the need for real-time visibility is within the supply chain. And I think COVID has we're all now working at home. We're not in front of a machine or in front of a computer that's on premise that may not have access to for whatever reason. So we're seeing really the driver of within the supply chain is real-time visibility into the supply chain, end to end within the supply chain, and then taking that data and creating a more connected customer. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. So we're seeing that's driving a lot of our business, as well as, of course, what I mentioned earlier is the need for data. When I say data, predictive data, contextual data, and prescriptive data. Those are the things that we focus on. Don't tell me things are failing. Tell me things are failing, but then tell me how to fix it or automatically fix it through what we call serverless infrastructure or serverless code to go out and do that automatically. So we're seeing a lot of trends around that. And of course, machine learning is big, and I know it's a buzzword and it's a bit of a cliche, but it's really driving between the machine learning and the artificial intelligence stuff and tools that are out there that are being provided by the major cloud providers as microservices.
Right.
That makes it more available than it was even 2 years ago. There's tons of open source libraries and microservices available to folks like us in our technical world that can take advantage of these much more effectively. And what I'm also seeing is a lot of these larger organizations, either they're going to be disruptive or they're going to get disrupted. And
I've heard that once or twice from this guy.
There's a lot of, I don't say scare, but there's a lot of thought being put into that, and it's a real thing.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff there, Tim. We're going to have you back so we take a deeper dive into some of those things you are tracking. Two quick thoughts. I love the, just like we've seen in the digital content and the podcast arena, I'm hearing you kind of speak of that democratization.
We need Daryl Lude here.
No kidding.
Democratization.
Democratization. Thank you, Greg.
Mouthful.
But that tech innovation for the people, that is such a beautiful thing. And I know that opens up a variety of challenges as well. Yeah. But that is such a wonderful thing to see taking place. And then secondly, you were talking about a lot of the data earlier in your thoughts there. And Greg, from the webinar yesterday, our friend Bob Slavin with Open Text mentioned how putting data in the hands of those that care and those that are qualified.
Right.
And really that seemed to resonate with a bunch of folks. And that leads me to bringing Kevin back in here. Obviously, data privacy is a big area of your specialization. Beyond what you've shared a moment ago, what else are you tracking out there in global business, global supply chain, Kevin?
Well, I think from two thoughts there. One, just from a general privacy perspective, the legal requirements continue to evolve, and on a patchwork basis by jurisdiction. Geography is very important from a privacy law perspective, if not privacy principles. We talked about GDPR a little bit earlier, but also here in the US, California has a new privacy law that just took effect earlier this year. It being California, they've just substantially amended that new law through a ballot initiative that passed earlier this month. So a lot of changes there, a lot of new obligations that came online this year are going to be coming online with that amendment over the next year or two. Organizations are going to have to think about their business activities in California, how they're covered under those rules, and what they're going to need to do to comply from a privacy policy perspective, a consumer rights perspective, including their employees here, as well as consumers that they're involved with as part of the supply chain, and also the needs of their customers, because that law has requirements for businesses to flow obligations down to service providers, so it can trickle through the supply chain.
Love it, man. Exciting times, despite the backdrop. Exciting times to be in supply chain. You know, there's so many silver linings to this pandemic landscape that we're in. That's going to make the industry stronger. Tough lessons learned, and really surface some gaps and weaknesses in global supply chains that we're able to address and take action on. Greg, so much good stuff here with Kevin and Tim, certainly over my pay grade as a non-technologist in many ways. But Greg, what are some of the cool things so what are to our listeners, you know, if you're sharing some key takeaways for what we're hearing with Tim and Kevin, what would those items be? I
think the one that really leaps out to me is the hurdles of getting to the cloud. To hear that, I think, Tim, you said 70% of data is still on, is that right?
Made from 80% is the stat that I was
80%. Okay. Sorry, I must have had a mental block.
The world's business data.
Right. And that is still on in essentially on-premise technologies, and also to hear from Tim that there are substantial reasons, that I think maybe I certainly hadn't really thought deeply about, and many of us probably haven't, that companies would not go to the cloud. That's big. First of all, not terribly surprising that there's so much data on-prem, but secondly, to think about what the practical hurdles that Tim described as difficulties for getting there. You can, of course, see it when the issue is raised, but it's not apparent, right? To think about how much intervention, how many manual processes or human processes or even technical customizations have been made to some of these applications that preclude them from being easily or cost effectively taken to the cloud. And secondly, of course, the data issues that it presents. And because it is out there, cloud particularly, but because solutions in the cloud are out there, the obligations, the risks, the legal consequences, right? And of course, the complexities that impact our privacy every single day. And I think we've gotten pretty cavalier about our privacy as individuals. And frankly, I'm frankly thankful that GDPR has been applied effectively, if not legally effectively, around the world, because I am one of those people. I wouldn't be so paranoid if everyone wasn't out to get me. But I am one of those people who, when they say accept cookies, or in the tiny, tiny font that they try to hide in the same color as the banner that it's on, I'm the one who clicks those and clicks off advertising and clicks off the data statistics tracking and only leaves the necessary operating cookies in there. So I think there are some good things that are happening, and it sounds like, frankly, California is trying to legislate the states from their own domicile by providing kind of a GDPR for California. And you know, there are lots of sides to that story, but in the end, hopefully we become mindful of that, because all of that, we as consumers, because all of that empowers the cloud to operate that much more effectively and to evolve that much more quickly.
Yep.
And
yeah,
Greg,
go ahead, Tim.
no, and you know, just as an example, actually, until Kevin mentioned that, I didn't know there was a California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, I guess is what they call it goes by. But I quickly Googled it, and I was curious how some of the major cloud providers handle it. But just an interesting point, as an example, AWS, one of the larger cloud providers, of course, Amazon, they actually released a microservice that actually helps companies meet that requirement. So, I mean, so just how fast that moved, the cloud providers are moving just as fast to support that. They also have a GDPR microservice to help with that requirement, SOC 1, SOC 2, HIPAA,
Right.
You name them all. You don't have to rewrite all that. You don't have to write that yourself and deploy that yourself. You take advantage of the microservices for those particular issues from a technical perspective.
That's a huge service, because it is terribly complex. I mean, just 2 years ago, I had a company and we were trying to comply with GDPR, and it was not a small task. So, I mean, the hurdles are substantial. The benefit of moving to the cloud is great, because you have literally unlimited processing power, and you have access to all of this new data that Tim was talking about that allows you to do things that technology companies that were built prior to cloud can't even comprehend. They couldn't use the data if you gave it to them, right? Because they don't have the underlying compilations, the underlying code to be able to capitalize on those rich data sets. So it's important that we get there. There's just so much to win by getting there.
It's the latest Eureka moment, powered by the incredible talented AGG team here in this series, always sharing Eureka moments with our guests here. So Kevin, on that note, let's make sure folks know how to connect with you and the team at Arnall Golden Gregory LLP.
Sure. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Kevin L. Coy, just my name, or by email, kevin.coy@agg.com.
Is just that easy. Of course, Greg will include these links in the show notes to make it, we're all chasing after that one click with no cookies required. Tim, what about you? How can folks connect with you and the Candid team?
No, absolutely. So visit our website at www.candid.cloud. You can reach me at tim.quinn@candid.cloud, or on LinkedIn, Tim Quinn 42, and connect with me and love to share additional information.
Outstanding. Congrats on all of your rapid growth at the Candid team, Tim.
Yeah.
It's quite a story. And I love all the pictures of the team that y'all have on your website. It seems like culture first at Candid for sure.
It really is. And it's a great culture. Our leadership is fantastic. We just got voted one of the top places to work in Atlanta, which is great. This is the 6th year in a row we're on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing private companies. I got to put a little plug out there because Greg, you had mentioned that in a world where a study came out 60% of cloud projects fail, we've done over 250 with Fortune 500 companies, not a single one has failed. So having a trusted advisor to help you with that path, and whether it's Kevin and around security and cybersecurity, whether it's Candid in terms of having the right cloud strategy, but also have the capability to actually execute the strategy, is a very important thing. And that's kind of what we do. And I don't know if you guys got it. It's kind of Candid came from can do and candid. So we're very focused on execution and getting things done.
How did we miss that? How did we not put that on the front end, Greg? That is so neat.
Usually we catch that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly it was. It's can do and can did.
Love it.
Love it. Well, Kevin, in terms of the AGG team, please give our best regards to Michael Golden and Kevin Bell and the whole team there. First class. Really appreciate just how much work y'all do to not just support the global supply chain industry, but across the business landscape. And y'all are just so dadgum consistent. Every guest that shows up, it always brings it. So I really appreciate that, Kevin.
Not to mention the best view in Atlanta. I know, Kevin, you're not in the Atlanta office, but it is the best view in Atlanta. It's the coolest building.
Yep. Good stuff. Well, big thanks to Tim Quinn with Candid, Kevin Coy with Arnall Golden, Gregory LLP. Great discussion. I've got 18 pages of notes. Always enlightening here. Greg, great discussion, right?
Yeah. Totally. You know, among other discoveries in this session, I love these, and this is just a small thing, but I love these new URLs that define what you do. Candid.cloud. I love that.
I do too.
Right? I don't know why we didn't think of that sooner, right?
It's the small things in life, right? It's
It
the small
is.
things in life for sure.
I'm a simple country boy.
But really enjoyed the conversation. A lot of learnings here. To our audience, hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. For similar conversations, interviews like this, be sure to check us out at supplychainnow.com. And of course, wherever you get your podcast from, subscribe for free, money back guarantee. Hey, on behalf of Scott Luton, Greg White, the whole team here at Supply Chain Now, challenge our audience like we challenge our team every day. Do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And with that said, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.